Caloroga Shark Media.
Hello, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. When we last left, I was recording Sunday's episode. Now I'm recording Monday's episode immediately after. Why? Because I have the house to myself. Now, let's see how long that lasts. What happens is sometimes people come home and they start sneaking around doing the laundry. My studio is right next to the laundry room, and they think I can't hear them. I can hear them, and the sneaking around is actually more distracting. If you came downstairs here to the basement level and you had a drum and a kazoo and you were super loud, at least I could make a bit out of that. Like when my dog barks, at least I can make a bit of that. But sneaking around, hi. Do I sound grouchy? There's only one way to get out of grouchy. Let me move a story up to the top. This was not originally a lead story, but just to shake the mood here. You ready? Have you figured it out yet? Netflix has announced Joe Coy live from Brooklyn, the latest special from comedian Joe Coy. See, I'm already in a good mood. Will premiere on Netflix June 4th. In Live from Brooklyn, Joe Coy shares his unfiltered opinions on social media, aging, and moving into a new phase of his life, his zaddy phase, taped at the King's Theater in Brooklyn last November. Now, we all know Joe Coy can have some pretty unfiltered opinions. One time, oh boy, he was just so mean. He went after Taylor Swift. Poor Taylor. She's just out there trying to sing her songs, make everybody happy. She shows up at the Golden Globes, and then Joe Coy had to go and do this. Whew.
As you know, we came on after a football doubleheader. The big difference between the Golden Globes and the NFL, on the Golden Globes, we have fewer camera shots of Taylor Swift.
All right, while I'm in this kind of mood, Ricky Gervais versus Jim Gaffigan, battle of the alcohol salespeople. Jim Gaffigan went on the WGN Morning News. He was hawking his bourbon. Let's listen.
How did you come up with that name, and does it have a double meaning?
It does. Well, it's not about the old guy that kind of rings in, who we, get rid of at the end of the year. And it's not about the time that a father, which is very important, that a father spends with their children. It is the time when a father can drink alcohol. And, I know that like alcohol is not the solution, but it's pretty close in my book. And so,
all right, kind of funny line there, but the energy's just off. Ricky Gervais, please show Jim Gaffigan how it's done.
Hi, I'm Ricky Gervais, and this is Dutch Barn Vodka. It's a premium quality spirit made from British apples, so it tastes great, and it's friendly to the environment. I tell you to love this, Einstein. He'd be like, E equals MC, sip squared. In all seriousness, alcohol isn't good for clear thinking at all. It's a neurotoxin that can disrupt communications in the brain. It also affects the function of brain cells, and that can lead to intellectual impairment, if anything. So, Dutch Barn.
Now, to be fair, if Jim did that exact same material, I'm not sure it would have worked as well. And I could see Jim go back and write a transcript for yourself. Actually, no, you're on Apple Podcasts now. There's a transcript. Scroll back up and read in your head to Jim Gaffigan voice what Ricky just said. Jim could absolutely do that material, but Ricky, I don't know. There's just something about the way he mugs for the camera, maybe. I don't know. Speaking of Ricky, the Advertiser and Times.co.uk tells us Ricky Gervais fans weren't leaving anything to chance. They started lining up for tickets at 4 a.m. on Friday. One fan said he got up at 5:45 and arrived at 6:15. There were already 20 people ahead of him in the queue. By the time the doors opened to the ticket office, the line stretched all the way up High Street. Regent Centre house manager Chris Cole said it's a real honor to be selected as the only venue outside of London for Ricky Gervais' new material show. This is one of the most high-profile acts we've ever welcomed to the Regent, so we're expecting tickets to sell incredibly quickly. Ricky Gervais and friends, Regent Centre, tonight and tomorrow. Your original lead story before I shuffled the order on the fly there. Theo Vaughn. Apparently, supposedly, possibly, maybe, I don't know, never met the guy. I've never opened for him, but possibly, perhaps, maybe, doesn't pay his openers too well, yeah. Dan Soder was on the Regs podcast and said a spectacularly successful podcasting comedian only pays his openers $100. The Regs is hosted by Soder, Joe List, Luis Gomez, and Robert Kelly. This article points out they're all deep enough in the comedy industry to reliably spread rumors and gossip about comedy's biggest names. So Soder revealed he had heard from a working comic who may or may not have opened for Theo Vaughn. Soder then mouthed words to his co-host that looked like he said, Theo Vaughn. But he didn't actually say it. Whoever this comedian is that's cheap, allegedly, only pays out $100 a show. The rest of the cast were appalled. Soder told Bobby Kelly, and this ain't when you started in the 60s. Soder said, the Chicago theater seats over 4,000 people, I think, around there. I'm going to look that up. 3,600 seats. So yeah, around 4,000. Soder said he's doing 2 sold-out shows a night, at least $80 a ticket, and you're making, that's $200,000 a night, and you're paying your opener $100. Other comedians corroborated the rate in the comments. Users found instances of stand-up such as Ari Manis opening for Theo Vaughn and revealing during their sets they were only paid $100. Iowa-based comic Dante Powell offered his own story of opening for Vaughn in a thread. According to Dante Powell, per this article, I opened for Theo at a theater a couple years ago and didn't get paid at all. That said, not only did he get us into some really cool spots in that city as well as some dope restaurants, he paid after the shows, but he was a welcoming hang and tagged me in a bunch of social media posts that got me a bunch of followers, so it evened out in the end for me. I can't stress enough how kind he was. I'm a regular feature for Kyle Kinane and Gary Goldman, and they both make sure I do really well financially, really in all caps, really well financially any weekends I do with them, so I try to take it all in stride. I don't know what Ari and the other opener got paid, but they didn't mention any issues with it. Soder said he was inspired by this story to value up-and-coming comics, saying, I'm going to Venmo all my old openers. Bobby Kelly said, that's nuts, because the podcast money is bleeping nuts, never mind the money from the shows. Joe List teased that Theo isn't the only comedian at that pay grade who doesn't trickle down the wealth, but he would not say who he was talking about. Good stuff from Vulture about John Mulaney's late-night show. They wrote, here's the thing, Netflix and Mulaney don't need to keep doing Everybody's in L.A. as it exists now. A future effort from Mulaney could be adjusted to air just once or twice a week. That's what I think the move is, rather than every night. The weirdness could be dialed down just a bit to bring in a broader audience and make the show feel more about pop culture and world events versus a LA travelogue. Or maybe Mulaney could do this format 4 times a year, pulling a 2024 Conan and traveling to a different city each quarter. I'd sure watch Everyone's in New Orleans. That all a great suggestion. The Griot with a great take on Katt Williams. I shared this in the Facebook group on Friday, Daily Comedy News Podcast group. The Griot writes, we have to be honest about Katt Williams, because I watched his new Netflix special and I have questions. Williams is a comedy icon, no doubt. We love him, but there's something missing from his act, and I think a lot of people are afraid to say it. In the spirit of comedy where nothing is unsayable, I'm going to say it. You know the old joke about how you go to a Chinese restaurant and eat a whole meal and you're hungry 30 minutes later? Well, when I watch a comedy special, I don't want the comedy to slip out of my mind 30 minutes after the show. I want more than laughs. I want jokes, at least one that I can walk away thinking about. I want those well-constructed moments I can repeat to myself, maybe to friends, to remind myself how good the comic was. Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock, Trevor Noah. I think there are 2 types of comedians. There are people with great material, and there are people with a funny vibe whose whole onstage presence is so hilarious that they could read the phone book and it would be funny. Chappelle is equally both, so is Wanda Sykes. Rock is much more of a material guy. His work is meticulously crafted, and I think he needs that to kill. Tracy Morgan, on the other hand, is much more of a phone book guy. This is really well said, all of this. This is on point, everything so far from the Griot. Katt Williams is probably the biggest phone book comic today. His vibe, his energy, and his voice all make his comedy come alive. I'll jump in here. I had commented when I reviewed the special last week. I felt like it was taking him 45 seconds to set up an okay joke, but I was entertained. The guy is entertaining. He's compelling. I like watching him. I like listening to him speak. How funny it was? I don't know. It was all vibe, and I think the Griot has nailed this here. He plays a character on stage, a badass, hyper self-confident, super black man who may or may not be a pimp. That character adds a lot to the funny. He's getting by on the Katt persona and the voice and the funny energy. He's not putting in the work to write great jokes, and I know he can do that. I want that from him. Joe Rogan had high praise for Tony Hinchcliffe. Tony's a lot more popular than he was a week ago, thanks to the roast of Tom Brady, and well-deserved. Guest Derek Poston said, when it came to roasting, I think Tony's the GOAT. I think he's the greatest. Rogan said, Tony's the best. There were some forces that were trying to limit him from his ability to shine. Interesting. He's reckless. Fortune Feimster and wife Jax will serve as the Chicago Pride Parade Grand Marshals. Parade is Sunday, June 30th. Parade organizer Pride Chicago said Fortune and wife will bring their infectious energy and inspiring love story to the heart of Chicago's LGBTQ plus community. I-95 Rock asked Lenny Clark who is on the Mount Rushmore of Boston. And boy, Dennis Leary, I hope you're not listening. Lenny Clark said, well, Bill Burr, Louis C.K., and as much as I hate to say it, Dane Cook and Joe Rogan. Yeah, I think he nailed those four. I mean, these are all incredibly successful stars that came out of Boston. It's funny, I was listening to Bill Burr the other day, and he said we left Boston because we couldn't crack the ceiling. The guys there were Steve Sweeney, Don Gavin, myself, Kenny Rogerson, some unbelievable comics you may have never heard of. But these guys, we used to work a show in Boston, they'd bring in these nationwide acts and would blow them off the stage. Just 3 shows at the Sydney Comedy Festival. I won the Sydney Comedy Festival Showcase. The second, the Best of the Fest International. And the third is... I'm stumbling here, trying to figure out how to clean it up. Faced Shakespeare, you know, when you're drunk-faced Shakespeare. You got it? Yeah. Drunk-faced Shakespeare. Let's go with that. Am I actually going to get through this whole podcast without somebody coming home and doing laundry? This is amazing. Chris Mejia spoke to thestranger.com, your home for comedy news. He was playing the Egyptian, which is rumored to be haunted. They asked Chris Mejia, do you believe in ghosts? Chris Mejia said, I'm ghost agnostic, but also I don't mess with ghosts. I'm not going to test that out. If the Egyptian really is haunted, you better not leave me alone in any rooms. I know white people love to go to haunted places to test that stuff out because you love being in places you don't belong. But nope, I'm good, bro. And that is your comedy news for today. One way to support the show, buymeacoffee.com/daily comedy news. I didn't bring a prop with me. I still got half a cup upstairs. Recorded a little earlier today while nobody was home. Anyway. Throw $5 in the tip jar. I will take your money. I will go to the National Donuts chain, and I will get a large iced coffee with caramel and almond milk, back on the almond milk kick. And Johnny Mac's got to start running. Oh, my goodness, the weight is back. It's just awful. Do I really have to run like 13 miles every day just to be somewhat fat instead of really fat? Don't get old, folks. See you tomorrow.